All right, Sonic 3. Before we even start, you guys peep the sweater, the holiday sweater. I went to a party and I got that. I thought the theme was supposed to be ugly sweaters, so I'm like, oh, bet I'll throw this on. And I get there and nobody's wearing an ugly sweater, so I got the wrong memo. So I was the only one wearing this, wearing something similar to this. So do with that with what you must. But Sonic 3. This movie's awesome. Just to put things blunt and straightforward, this movie's great. Honestly, this gave us everything that we wanted as Sonic fans, and even more on top of that. I personally caught every single reference within this film, down to the music, the emotes Sonic would do, even like things that I didn't think they would put in this film. They put it in there, and I'm like, whoa, I thought we don't talk about that. You know what I'm saying? But everybody's doing an amazing job in this film. Ben Schwartz as Sonic, amazing. he really embodies that cocky teenage anthropomorphic hedgehog type of thing, where it's like you're one of the fastest creatures in the universe and borderline the strongest. Shadow's probably stronger, but borderline one of the strongest creatures in this universe, and you capture that cocky attitude perfectly. Jim Carrey is also an amazing part of this film. He plays both Dr. Robotnik and Gerald Robotnik, and the way that he makes it seem like there's two different actors on the screen, but it's just the same person. The chemistry, he has so much chemistry that he can have it with himself. It doesn't make any sense, but amazing. Keanu Reeves is Shadow. It's something that I didn't believe until the movie announced it. And though all around some of the dialogue within like the characters that are voicing, or the actors that are voicing characters that aren't there, it is a bit wonky because they're not on the set, so they don't have like real-time context, if that makes sense. On top of that, everybody did a great job, especially Keanu Reeves as Shadow. He really captures that gritty 50-year-old I was gonna say 50-year-old hedgehog, but just that veteran, that like he's been here before, you know. Shadow's an old man, and he captures that perfectly. I kind of like this rendition of Shadow, where he was cryo frozen for 50 years, but before he was cryo frozen, all he had was the feeling of revenge. So that's a pain and a revenge, and that's all he knows. I love that, and the way that Keanu Reeves kind of showcases that gritty and that broken sort of tone within his voice. Awesome. Another thing I liked about Shadow was his backstory with Maria. I don't really think they really touched on it in the games as in-depth as they did here, and it's great. I won't go into detail right now, spoilers later on, but I felt more of a chemistry between movie Shadow and Maria than video game Shadow and Maria. And everybody looked great, down to like the actors. Jim Carrey looked amazing, playing both Gerald and Dr. Robotnik. The CGI on Tails, Sonic, and Knuckles looked great. Shadow, my gosh, Shadow just looks straight out of the game. But that's my overall review. I do want to get into spoilers, so if you guys haven't seen the film, come back later, save it. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. I'll see you guys later. But now we're going to get into I want to go more in detail and just basically talk about the film. It's not scene by scene, but basically like some points that stood out to me. So let's get into it. This video is brought to you by Hellscape Trigger, written by yours truly. I recently published it on the Amazon, so if you want to check it out, the link will be in the description below. Alright, so I'm going to hold the phone for this one. As you guys can see, I'm in a completely different setup. I'm home for the holidays, so I'm just making do with what I have. As you can see, I'm using my phone as a microphone here, not the one that's set up to my desk. But anyways, let's get into the film. So the film starts off where the second one ended, technically with the post-credit scene, and we see that Shadow is still cryo-frozen, and there's some guys talking about him, and obviously, you know, things are about to hit the fan because the guy's like, oh, don't worry, this guy hasn't been he's been cryo frozen for about 50 years, he's not getting out. And all of a sudden he basically breaks out with the help of Gerald Robotnik. And so Shadow, you know, he wreaks havoc, and he escapes. And one scene that I really liked during his escape is where he's skating on the water, and the detail of how he has to like kind of gain, like basically balance and kind of speed up his momentum as he's skating through, that was just really cool. But from this scene, you could just tell the pacing was going to be boom, boom, we got to go here, we got to go there. So we jump cut to Sonic and his friends, and they do a little race. They're celebrating Sonic's 1 year anniversary of arriving to Earth, which I thought the movie took place 6 months after the second one. I didn't know it took place a whole year. I guess that was just me not paying attention. But so Sonic and Tom end up talking. Tom is his like adopted father. So they end up talking, and while Tom is basically giving him this motivational speech about how he didn't change who he is, we see Shadow kind of walking through the city of Tokyo. And one thing that really got me, or just had me kind of think, was like, does nobody notice him just walking? Because everybody was just walking like it was just a normal night, normal rainy night, and Shadow's just kind of just walking across the street like he's a normal Samaritan or a normal citizen. And I was just like, does nobody notice this like 4 foot tall hedgehog or creature? Nobody knows it's a hedgehog, but just a creature just walking down the street. Obviously Gun did, because they show up and Shadow ends up fighting them off. You don't see it, but because it jump cuts to Sonic and the gang, it's night outside, they're just relaxing. All of a sudden a gun helicopter shows up. So this just shows you the pacing of this film. A gun helicopter shows up, and Gun basically tells Team Sonic, that's what they call him, Team Sonic. They basically tell Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails, hey, there's something going on in Tokyo. We need your help. So Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles agree, and they go to Tokyo. It jump cuts. Now we're in Tokyo. And from here, this is the scene where you see them jump from the helicopter, and now they're in the city, and they first encounter Shadow. You know, you're a colorful bunch. That scene right there. So if you guys know how that plays out, Shadow 3v1 or 1v3, 3v1. He clutches up a 3v1. He beats everybody up. And then from here, Shadow gets onto his motorcycle. He takes the gun. He tells Sonic not to follow. And he ends up driving off. But obviously, Sonic ends up following him. So you get this really cool chase scene between Shadow and Sonic as they're running through the city and the camera's zipping with them. There's one scene where Sonic kind of jumps through a van. And he's like, oh, excuse me. And he zooms through. Like, it's really cool. And so the scene ends with Shadow kind of driving his bike onto a building, and the building, and Sonic kind of chasing him up it. And it's the scene where Shadow is he's standing on the bike, and he charges towards Sonic, and Sonic charges towards him, and they clash, and their collision blackouts the entire city. Like the city blacks out for a second, which was pretty cool. But Sonic ends up waking up, and he's handcuffed to a rail, meaning Shadow got away. And so flash forward, there's a little exposition with they're in the Chow Garden sort of restaurant, a little bit of exposition with I believe it was a colonel or a general. He's telling them about Shadow, and then all of a sudden these Eggman drones show up, and they basically kill the general / colonel. Are those the exact same thing? If those are the exact same thing, I apologize. I have no clue. But they end up killing this character, and before they can fight Sonic and Knuckles and Tails, Sonic and the gang, Team Sonic, we'll call him Team Sonic. Before they can fight Team Sonic, a guy on a motorcycle shows up. I am deducting this by like not really going into detail about the fight scenes, but the way I'm explaining this is the way the movie is just getting all this out. The pacing is so fast. It's such a fast-paced movie. So this guy on a motorcycle comes in, he stops the drones. Team Sonic ends up chasing him. Turns out it's Agent Stone, and he's telling them, yeah, the doctor, these aren't his drones. And so this leads us into Robotnik's introduction or reintroduction. And Team Sonic ends up seeing him. He's kind of just a slob. He's putting like all these different sauces on a burrito. He's eating it. He's only taking one bite and throwing it away. Wasteful. Real villain. And he said the Congo drums on his belly. And he's watching a Spanish soap opera. And so Team Sonic ends up seeing Eggman. It's a really funny scene. And they end up telling Eggman that yeah, your drones are being used for your drones are being used by someone else. You're not really, we got to go figure this out. And so Eggman's like, okay, well, I pinpointed a yada yada scientific exposition. Basically, this leads to Sonic and Eggman teaming up for like a brief second. They team up. And so from there, we see the base that Shadow was tested in and stuff, because that's where the drones are. So Shadow's obviously there reminiscing. And this is where we get Shadow's backstory with Maria. And I really like how there's no dialogue throughout the entire thing. There's rarely any dialogue. It's mostly just like a musical montage. The only time there is dialogue is when they're sitting on the stars together. And that's just a really nice scene. They have a really nice quote there about like, if the stars go out, the light still shines or something like that. It's really nice. And I also really do, throughout this entire film, honestly, I love Shadow's mannerism, where he's still kind of hardened, but like he still has like happy emotions, sad emotions, but he's still got this grimace on his face. I can't really explain it, but if you look at Shadow and you see a scene where he's sad, he still has like a scowl on his face, if that makes sense. He's still hardened, but he still allows those emotions to come in, if that makes sense. So Eggman and Sonic end up teaming up, obviously, yeah. They go to the old gun research base, and at this point you see Shadow picking them off one by one. It's really funny. He goes for Knuckles first, then he goes for Agent Stone and Tails. They have a really nice like scene together too, Agent Stone and Tails. But Shadow ends up picking them off one by one, and Eggman and Sonic are talking to each other, and Eggman is trauma dumping on Sonic about how nobody loves him. He didn't have a family. Sonic ends up wandering off, and Shadow, this is where I was talking about Sonic and Shadow, they fight about 3 times. This second fight isn't really a fight. Shadow ends up knocking out Sonic. And so from here, Eggman, obviously him and Sonic are separated. So Eggman's asking for Sonic, but he ends up finding Gerald. Gerald is there, and this is where Jim Carrey honestly shines. They end up talking to each other, and Gerald's trying to ask Eggman Eggman's trying to ask Gerald like, oh, what is the something about the bus from Speed? It was a very complex math equation, but he figured it out. I want to say that they actually calculated that too, which is insane. But there's also a fourth wall break where they're like, you look just like me. It looks like we're played by the same actor in a movie. And they look at the camera. That was funny. That was a clever joke. They end up Shadow ends up tying up Team Sonic, and Eggman ends up teaming up with Gerald, obviously, and they end up throwing a black hole, trying to kill them. Obviously, they escape. And so from this point, again, I'm just jump cutting because I don't take good notes when I'm watching movies. I'm sorry. So, but I'm basically telling it in order, because this is not what happens directly afterward, but this is what happens. So we get a Gerald and Dr. Robotnik montage scene where Gerald's like, well, we just need to bond a little bit. How about I bond with my grandson? So you get a scene where they're riding a roller coaster. You get the Santa scene. There's one scene where they're like watching fireworks and stuff. It's funny. It doesn't go on for too long either, because I would think like it would go on for entirely way too long and kind of drag. That's my only problem. There's one scene in this film that kind of drags a little bit, but again, it's Jim Carrey, so it works. But if it was anybody else, I'd kind of have a problem with it. But from there, it leads into the only human subplot like that aren't Robotnik and Gerald, which is Tom and Maddie. It leads into the only human subplot and it also contributes to the story, if that makes sense. Sonic ends up recruiting Maddie and Tom, and they want to go to London to kind of like break into, it's a very convoluted plan for me to explain, but they want to break into the gun base to stop Robotnik and Gerald from getting these keys they need to open up this space station to fire this big giant cannon onto the planet. It's a lot, but it's basically it kind of takes inspiration from Sonic Adventure 2, if you know about the Eclipse cannon and them shooting the moon and stuff like that. But there's also a really funny scene where the bad guys arrive to London, and Gerald and Robotnik want to go into the gun base. Well, Shadow does too, but they're like, I don't think Gerald had a reason, but basically Agent Stone needs to babysit Shadow, and he's like, "Oh, I'll make some guac for you. We'll watch the Spanish soap opera. I'll make some guacamole." And Shadow's like, "We need or revenge guac or something like that." That was funny. There was a hologram scene between Tom and Maddie. Tails puts like these little chips onto their shirt, so they make holograms of their faces, and so they end up turning into I believe Rachel, and I forgot the other guy's name, but the two characters from the last film that got married. I feel like this was a clever way to bring in these characters from the last films without really diverting the plot like they did in the second film. And again, this is just all around a really, really good human subplot to keep the story going. You don't really slow it down at all. There's one scene that I think went on for a little bit too long, and it's the Rachel scene where she's like, "I'm gonna get you fired." Am I supposed to be offended? I feel like I won't get into it, but I was just like, okay, that's kind of. I think I'm kind of played out of that whole sort of trope of comedy. But anyways, this whole scene is taking place in the gun-based, or this whole second act of the film, quote unquote second act. But there is this scene that I was talking about that was going on a little bit too long. Was the dancing scene between Gerald and Robotnik. If you guys have seen it, you know. It's Jim Carrey. He's just dancing. They go into this laser facility, and their suit, the laser kind of like refracts from their suit, so it's basically like a laser show. And they're like, "Yeah, we can dance." And Jim Carrey is known for dancing in these films. I believe he dances in every single one. So this was obviously gonna happen, but it just went on a little bit too long for me, especially when you have like Team Sonic is on the way and they're in a gun base, and they could be compromised at any second. So flash forward a little bit, there's an action scene with these platforms that are like some can like reversal gravity, so it lifts you up so you're like floating, and then there's some that can like intensify gravity, which just smacks you onto the ground. It's a really fun scene. There's another funny joke between, again, Jim Carrey. There's another funny joke in this scene between Robotnik and Gerald where they obviously get captured, and Robotnik's like, "I can't believe this," and then Gerald's like, "I know, grandson, a woman in the military," because one of the characters is a female sergeant, I don't know, that was just funny to me. I didn't I don't know, that type of humor. So Sonic ends up finding them. They end up taking the key, or Tom ends up taking the key. Long story short, he uses the hologram to turn into the colonel/general that died, and he ends up taking the key, but Shadow ends up running into him, and Shadow's like, "Oh yeah, I'm about to spin back," and he ends up punching Tom. I guess punching him so hard he died, or he didn't die, but that's the one thing. It's a children's film. Some of the quote unquote deaths or injuries are a bit childish. Like, he gets punched. Well, honestly, take a punch from Shadow. Take a punch with that electricity fist. Take a punch from Shadow and tell me if you're getting up. Honestly, I wouldn't be getting up. I think I'd be Tom in that situation. But I thought Tom had died here, but again, it's a children's film, so he's not going to. I don't think they're really going to kill him off. And so Sonic finds him, and he's pissed. He's pissed at Shadow. He's like, "What did you do?" And Shadow's like, "What I had to." And he ends up leaving. And now from this point, Tom ends up going, and they leave the gun base. They end up leaving, and Tom is getting escorted in an ambulance to the hospital. And now from here, Sonic wants to use the Chaos Emeralds, and they referred to it back before where I believe Maddie wanted to use the Chaos Emeralds, but Sonic was like, "Nah, that's not cool. We're not doing that." And now Sonic's like, "No, we're going to use these, and I'm going to stop Shadow." But Knuckles knows that Sonic wants to use it for revenge. And so you get this really, really tense scene where Knuckles is like, "Don't do this. Like, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to give you this emerald. You need to chill out." And Sonic's like, I'm not going to ask again, bro. Where's this emerald at? And so there's a point where Sonic's charging up, Knuckles is charging up. But just a really, really nice form of character development from Knuckles is that Knuckles is the first to calm down. The hot-headed character is the first to calm down, and he's like, "Well, you may have broken our oath, but another part of our oath is to like trust each other. So I trust you, though you might use these for revenge. And so Knuckles ends up warning Sonic about how there's like this guardian. He's very tough and ruthless, but it ends up being Wade from the Knuckles series. That was funny. And so Sonic ends up taking the emeralds from Wade and ends up turning into Super Sonic. So we get Super Sonic in this film. By the way, I just want to divert here. If you are somebody in the audience that wants to invoke a reaction from everybody, you suck. You suck, because after this scene where Sonic goes Super Sonic and he flies off, you had somebody in the background going, "Oh, it's Super Sonic." Yeah, dude, I'm not paying you to tell me what's going on. I'm paying the theater that pays the studio, I think. I'm wanting the movie to tell me what's going on, not you. So shut up. And so now from here, turns out that this space station was on was the gun base. So they end up lifting it and flying it into space. And from here, they need to charge the reactor, or charge the cannon, I guess. And so Gerald's telling Shadow about, like, remember what they did to Maria. And then from here, we get the scene where Maria gets killed, but she doesn't get shot, which I don't know why I didn't put two and two together. Like, why would we see this little girl get gunned down in a PG film? I feel like it was a clever way to keep her. It wasn't even clever. It was like, it was right in my face, but I was so stuck on, yeah, she's gonna get shot. We're gonna see her get shot, that I just didn't see the fact that, no, she could just die from an explosion, or she could just die from any sort of non-violent way, you know? Like, she just dies from an explosion. I like that scene a lot. I like how they didn't show her get gunned down, because there's even a point where they're about to shoot her, and the general / colonel, when he was younger, he ends up like telling them to stop. Like, these are children. And I love how they refer to Shadow as a kid. I don't know. I love how they refer to him as a kid. They're like, because Gerald's like, "Come on, children," and this grizzled voice, gray fur having creature is running with him. So this leads to Shadow getting pissed off, and he charges the cannon. And from here, I believe the scene, or I guess after he's done charging the cannon, I believe Gerald tells Robotnik about his plan, and Robotnik's like, "Oh wow, you're insane. Why are you about to do that?" And so, just skipping ahead a little bit to, this is where it kicks off like the best part of this entire film. These last 35 minutes, awesome, man. So somebody on the ship asked if Gunn is firing missiles at them. I believe it was Robotnik, or it might have been Shadow, I don't remember. But Gerald's like, "No, that thing's moving way too fast to be a missile." And then all of a sudden, it's like a blink if you miss it scene of Sonic just tackling Shadow, or just grabbing him and taking him from the space station. It's like, shoom, and that's it. And from here, I didn't realize how indestructible hedgehogs are, because Shadow is falling back into orbit. He's breaking the atmosphere, and the back of his head is on fire. And he's just talking to Sonic. He's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't remember what he said word for word, but he's talking to Sonic while he's on fire, essentially. And so they end up crashing back down to Earth, and Sonic tries to charge towards Shadow again, but Shadow with one hand just smacks the Chaos Emeralds from him. And I believe this is because Shadow has Chaos energy, so this is nothing new to him. I would really, really love to see them like kind of go into the lore of where these hedgehogs come from, because they even mention a scene where Sonic is kind of confused on why Shadow looks like him, and I don't think Shadow knows that he's a hedgehog. I don't think he refers to himself as a hedgehog. Sonic does call him a hedgehog, but Shadow doesn't say anything about it. I would love to see them go into kind of more of the lore. Like, Sonic's not surprised that Shadow can, well, I guess he knows he's a hedgehog, but like, what's up with these hedgehogs? Can we just, you don't have to make your own lore about it, but just like go deeper into it, maybe for like a spin-off title or something. But from here, Shadow ends up smacking the emeralds from Sonic, and they're just floating there, and Sonic ends up charging for the emerald. Shadow charges for him, and I feel like we all got swindled, because this is where this scene right here is where we see Super Shadow. And I would have never guessed that. So, like I said, Super Shadow emerges, and we get a full-on Dragon Ball Z fight. And the coldest scene for me was when Sonic charged towards Sonic. No, Sonic charges towards Sonic. Oh my God. Sonic charges towards Shadow, and Shadow blocks his punch with one hand. He's like, "This, yeah, you're right. This ends now." And he just ends up beating Sonic, dude. They end up punching each other across the world, like the country to country. And you see it from the arc, and they're just moving just across the whole country, or across the continents. And I just found that really, really cool. They end up They finish fighting, and Sonic's down on his luck. He's on one knee. Shadow's kind of making fun of him, and he says something about Tom, and this is where Sonic just like crashes out. And I kid you not, punches him to the moon. And this is one thing I really, really like about these movies, is that they're not afraid to show these characters getting down, man. I don't remember Sonic ever being able to like punch and kick. The first time I saw Sonic punching and kicking was in Smash Brothers, and I was like, whoa, Sonic's getting active. But like now they're actually like punching each other to the moon. They're punching each other across countries. They're kicking. The only time I saw like a Sonic character punching and kicking that wasn't Sonic was Shadow, and I saw that within the Shadow the Hedgehog spinoff, because most of the time Sonic, all he does is turn into a ball and he just bumps on people, you know. And one thing I don't think I remember seeing, I don't think I saw it all, but Shadow doesn't turn into a ball this whole entire movie. I think Sonic does many times, but Shadow does not. I like that characterization a little bit. Sonic ends up punching Shadow to the moon and knocking the Chaos Emeralds out of him. And right when Sonic's about to kill Shadow, because Shadow's like, yeah, do it. I'm right here. Yeah, do it. You're not going to do it. Sonic remembers what Tom says to him. And Sonic's like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. This is not me. And it's kind of crazy just to see Shadow's character, because like I said before, this is all this man knows. He was frozen for about 50 years with the revenge on his mind. So he wakes up and he still has revenge on his mind. It's kind of tragic, but he ends up redeeming himself, because at this point, Sonic ends up telling Shadow about how revenge isn't the way. Revenge is a bad thing. And so Sonic's like, yeah, you could always make up for it by redeeming what your past mistakes or something like that. Basically, this leads into a Sonic and Shadow team up, and it's one of the hardest dap ups I've ever seen, where they dap up and they both go super and the Chaos Emeralds are flowing around them. All of this is happening to Live and Learn, by the way. And so this was nothing but a love letter to Sonic fans, because just seeing them fly through to Crush 40's Live and Learn, because I thought they'd do like a cover or something. No, it's Crush 40's Live and Learn, straight out of the soundtrack. It's awesome. So from here we go to Gerald and Robotnik, because Robotnik ends up thinking like, yeah, I don't want to destroy the world, I just kind of want to rule it. And I believe this is the point where he realizes Gerald was just using him, and so they end up fighting. It's just ridiculous Jim Carrey slapstick humor, but it works. It's a very funny scene. It's somehow still epic just seeing like Eggman fight his grandfather. The Shadow and Sonic teaming up and Eggman versus Gerald somehow complement each other when it comes to just final battle epicness. And again, it's Jim Carrey slapstick humor. There's a giant fist being used. Gerald turns into a scorpion while Robotnik turns into a mantis. It's ridiculous. Anyways, so Gerald ends up winning that fight, and he ends up releasing these gun robots to stop Sonic and Shadow. And dude, this is the coolest scene within probably top 5 best scenes from 2024, honestly, because the way I had chills just going up and down my body watching this, because the rendition of Live and Learn that they used is like a cinematic orchestrated version, and the way that you see Sonic and Shadow just kind of just breaking, just going through these robots and stuff, punching and kicking them. There's one point where Shadow uses his jet shoes to like blow up a robot, and it ends with them doing the pose, the iconic Sonic and Shadow Sonic Adventure 2 pose. My goodness, this scene, what a time to be a Sonic fan, honestly. They hit this pose like 5 times, by the way. They hit it in the credits, they hit it in the trailer, and they hit it here. So Gerald is about to kill Eggman, but he's saved by Knuckles and Tails, and now I'm kind of just like, how did they get there? But I'm not really going to think that hard because I just saw Sonic and Super Shadow fight or team up to fight these gun robots to live and learn while also hitting the Sonic Adventure 2 pose at the end. I have nothing to complain about at this point. My brain is just on fire at this point. So Eggman also as Eggman is being saved by Tails and Knuckles because Gerald's about to throw him out of the space spaceship, but Tails and Knuckles end up grabbing him and saving him. And I guess at that point he took a quill from Gerald's pocket. He takes Shadow's quill and shoves it up his butt. Yeah, shoves it up his butt, which sends him flying into the exposed reactor. And it's just like, and he's dead. Gerald is dead. And so we cut back to Sonic or Shadow and Sonic fighting. I believe the cannon's about to fire. Yeah, the cannon's about to fire, and so Knuckles, Tails, and Eggman, they need to turn the cannon away from Earth. And so Shadow's like, hey, are you done yet? Like, what's taking you so long to take out these robots? And Sonic is leading all the robots to Shadow, and from this point, Shadow uses Chaos Spears. That is one thing I didn't think he would do in this film. There's 2 things I didn't think he'd do in this film. I didn't think he'd go Super Shadow, and I didn't think he'd use Chaos Spears. This third thing was such a niche thing that I just thought we forgot about. I'll bring it up. But, so they successfully end up turning the laser away from Earth after Sonic and Shadow end up deflecting it. Sonic passes out from deflecting, or not deflecting, but just basically holding it off. The laser's too powerful for Sonic, so he ends up just passing out and falling back to orbit. And the Tails ends up jumping down and trying to save him. And so from this point, I guess the Ark is it called the Ark or just the space colony? Or space colony. The space station is going to explode. And Eggman's telling Shadow this. And he's like, yeah, if it explodes, then it's just like, there's going to be so much radioactive cloud, I believe, floating over Earth. And so it'll just be a whole bunch of acid rain and a lot of radiation poisoning is what Eggman said. I don't really remember. But Shadow's like, no, we got to push this thing away. We got to save Earth. And from this point, Shadow goes back outside and takes off his amplifiers, his little rings. I think the first time I saw him do that was Sonic 06. And when he does that, he's like 10 times stronger than what he is now. I thought Sonic 06 was that was the third thing I didn't think they would do. I thought Sonic 06 was like a dead property. I didn't think we'd ever, hint or reference to that at all unless it was in bad faith. But the fact that they kept I thought that it would have been retcon too, because I don't remember seeing another time where he just done this, but correct me if I'm wrong. But I thought they would end up retconning that, but they didn't, and that made me so happy. They paid homage to Sonic 06. And so from here, Eggman ends up sacrificing himself, and I feel like it is a great send-off to Jim Carrey's character. He ends up sending a message to Agent Stone. It's such a nice send-off because there's callbacks to the lattes, or I believe it's the coffees or the lattes that Agent Stone makes for Eggman. He's like, yeah, I like the way you make them, or something like that. It's really nice. God bless Jim Carrey. Tails ends up jumping down from the space station to save Sonic, but Tails is a little boy, so he passes out. I don't know why he tried to do that, but he passes out. But Knuckles, he ends up jumping down and saving both of them. And from here, the movie essentially ends. They go back to they go back to re-celebrate the Be Earth Day, I believe, or just celebrating the fact that they saved the world. And it ends with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles racing through the forest. So the overall movie, from there again it ends. The overall movie is amazing, but it's a 10 out of 10 for me. Honestly, I have no problem with it. Probably a 9.5 out of 10. Let me be realistic here, but that's not really a big difference. Let's talk about these post-credit scenes. So the first post-credit scene picks off where the movie ends essentially where Sonic, he ends up running way too far. So he ends up running to New York. And he's like, oh man, how do I get back? And while he's trying to figure this out, we see Metal Sonic. Metal Sonic just appears, and he's got his little gun hand, and he's about to kill Sonic, but you know, Sonic's fast, so he ends up dodging the blast, punching Metal Sonic. He's like, yeah, if you want to take a swing at the goat, or take a swing at the fastest person in the universe, you best not miss, or something. I think I quoted that word for word, but he ends up saying that. That was kind of cool. And so Metal Sonic here, I'll talk about it later. Let's just keep going through. So Metal Sonic, he ends up getting back up, and you see a whole bunch of Metal Sonics, a whole bunch of clones starting to surround Sonic. And you're like, oh man, this is gonna suck. And from here, you see a pink hammer go around and knock out every single clone. And the hammer ends up going back to who threw it. And it is Amy Rose. And I really like how they're already making her like she can handle herself, you know? Like most of the time, Amy, she's always been able to do that, but one of her biggest character traits was her being obsessed with Sonic. Now it seems like they're about to redo her whole entire character, it seems like. But I'm glad she has her hammer, her ridiculously big hammer. She ends up saving Sonic, and first time watching this, the theater was so loud I couldn't hear anything. So I didn't know Sonic asked who it was. So they actually do share dialogue. Amy doesn't talk. She's wearing a robe though, and she takes off the robe, reveals her face. Really, really good design. I don't think that's what she'll look like for the next film, but I don't even think that's what Metal Sonic will look like for the next film. I'll go back to what I was talking about there, but I think I don't think I like the full video game look of Metal Sonic, because he doesn't. The thing about Metal Sonic is that he's supposed to look like Sonic. So he looks like Sonic from the video games, but Sonic from the video games and movie Sonic, they don't look alike at all. So hopefully they do redesign Metal Sonic and make him look more like the movie version. Not completely, but just like, you know, kind of like base those aspects off of the movie version, if that makes sense. Amy looks great though. I believe she had her headband. From what I've seen, yeah, she has her headband. Her quills go in front inside of her face, or to the front in the side of her face. Awesome post-credit scene. The second post-credit scene is just to show that Shadow's still alive. His amplifier is on the ground. No telling where it is, but his amplifier is on the ground. He ends up picking it up. Live and Learn plays again. Fade to black. Where do we go? Where does this film franchise go? Personally, from this Metal Sonic thing, I think we might be getting, because Eggman's dead. Without Eggman, you don't really have Metal Sonic. So I'm thinking you take a route, you go down the Sonic Heroes route, where you had, I believe his name was Neo Metal Sonic, where he was kind of his own character. He kind of branched away from Eggman, or I think he was the main antagonist of that video game. I feel like you should do something like that, where he's more sentient. So you can have somebody voice him and all that. When it comes to Shadow, I believe they're going to do, I think you should do a Shadow the Hedgehog movie. Don't do a TV show. A lot of people love Shadow. When he first showed up on the screen during my first viewing, kids already knew who he was. They were like, Shadow. If you have a whole movie dedicated to Shadow the Hedgehog, that'd be crazy. And then I'm not sure if they'll base it off of the games, because, well, they might, because in this, I don't think Shadow was in the video game. Shadow was created by Gerald, I believe. He's created by Gerald Robotnik as the ultimate life form. I don't think they call him the ultimate life form in this film, but from the film, they changed it, I believe, to where he crash landed from a meteor. And if you look at the meteor, it kind of looks like the Black Doom-esque kind of design. They also include that in the music video, but it's got the Black Doom-esque design. It's kind of like the aliens from Shadow the Hedgehog. So I'm thinking maybe they go down the Shadow the Hedgehog route. I don't know. This could go anywhere, but if you're going to go down the Sonic, if you're also going to try to do a rendition of Sonic Heroes, introduce Omega and Rouge in Shadow. And also, if you're going to do Knuckles Season 2, introduce the Chaotix. so they can have so we can do a whole thing. You'll have Team Sonic, you'll have Team Dark, you'll have Team Amy, and you'll have I forgot what Team Chaotix or something. Because for Sonic 4, Amy obviously has dealt with these Metal Sonics before, so have Amy take Sonic to go see Cream and Big the Cat. Oh my god, am I cooking? Am I cooking here? Oh man. I love seeing this universe just come to life, guys. Anyways, that was my very, very long-winded review. I believe this video is like 40 minutes long. I'm sorry. This is my very, very long-winded review of Sonic 3. I wanted to get this out for you guys before Christmas because I am planning on doing a Christmas special. Take that with a grain of salt because I really don't know what to do this year. But anyways, if I had to rate this film again, I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. Just because some aspects I wish they dove more deeply into, like the fact that Sonic and Shadow are hedgehogs. Where do these hedgehogs come from? Why can they harness chaos energy with the Chaos Emeralds and stuff? Hopefully they go into that within like the 4th film. Like just go deeper into the lore of Sonic, just where he comes from. Why do they have gloves? Why they both have gloves? Stuff like that. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this film. This film deserves all the praise that it can get. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you guys thought about Sonic the Hedgehog. Are you guys ready for the 4th film? Are you guys ready for the potential fifth film? Will we see Silver in there, you know? I thought we were going to see Silver, but a guy can dream. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. If I don't post a Christmas special, Merry Christmas. Hope you guys have a Happy New Year. Happy holidays if you don't celebrate Christmas. But I'll see you guys later.